Hey there, and welcome to It's Almost 2020. What are you doing with your life, you terrible, terrible wrong thinker? Actually, I want to wish you a very merry holiday season. I hope that it's treated you very well. We're rolling into a new year, and I hope when you go out and, you set down resolutions for yourself, don't be too hard on yourself. Look at the things that you truly want to change. Look at the things that'll make you successful, and really, look at the things that make you a happier person. If that means cutting certain things out of your life or changing up things, then do that. And also set goals where you can actually make that happen. And again, don't be too hard on yourself there. Also, when you wake up on January the 1st with a head full of disgust because of whatever you got into the day before, whether that's a hangover or something more, remember, again, it's almost 2020, wrong thinker. What in the world is going on? I'm waiting for people to start telling us that too. We're going to hear quite a bit of that. It's almost 2020. What is going on? Speaking of that thought process, let's talk about Marvel and let's talk about the Punisher. Now, Marvel itself, when you go in and you look at source material, Marvel has really lost the plot. It's amazing to look at books that are chocked full of politics, whether that be just politics itself or whether that be identity politics or on. They have gone in, they have thought that they are, making sales to this current year crowd, and really what you see are rising pricing points, things that are getting more expensive and diminishing returns, as in a negative 6% as it comes to units shipped, and that's from a catastrophic year in 2017. Now, that kind of thinking process, it is not really leaked into the big screen yet, but as far as we can tell, it's coming. If you look at some of the movies that are coming up and the way that they're being advertised, yeah, we're seeing more and more of it. We have seen one movie that was advertised that way, but as far as the movie itself, we haven't seen that problem. Now, the small screen, when you look at some of the shows that Marvel has showcased, yeah, you already see that there. And people, they get sick of that. That's why you see really negative reviews for certain shows right before they disappeared. Go out and look at Marvel shows that go into their second season and on. Look at the ones that decide to shoehorn in a specific thought process, and you tell me when you're going through that. You tell me if that was done well, if it's really respectful to the source material, and beyond that, if you're truly providing escapism. That's the thing that a lot of this stuff is done. First of all, a lot of it is not really faithful to source material. A lot of times you get too many changes. People don't like that, period. But then beyond that, being respectful to the person or persons that are going out and picking that up, is that truly what you're seeing represented there? When you think about the people that put this stuff out on the screen too, look up people like Joe Quesada. If you want to see why exactly you have this kind of mindset, go and look the people up that are responsible for that. Look at the people that are responsible for source material these days too. Look at the Tom Brevoorts and on. Look at the people that would denounce their own children, quite literally, because they have a certain political persuasion. They vote the wrong way. And think about what you would shoehorn into shows, how exactly that ends up there. Now, with regard to The Punisher, I want to talk about Season 2. But before I get to Season 2, I really want to talk a little bit about Season 1 and some of the woke highlights that you get in articles. I'm only going to touch on that very briefly, but I do want to show you the picture that Marvel and your star here, the guy playing the Punisher, throws out. Now, as far as Season 1 went, I personally did not like the changes. I didn't like the fact that they removed moral ambiguity, the question of whether or not you sympathize with a Frank Castle by making him a bad guy. Maybe a lesser bad guy, but still, they made him a bad guy. They made him a tactically trained person taking on other tactically trained people. And the reason that all of this transpired, well, it wasn't incidental. Oh no, it's kind of Frank's fault. Within this too, I didn't like the updated version as well. I like the down and dirty warfare when you're talking about a Vietnam vet taking on the mob. I mean, when you look at some of the things that transpire within the comics because of that, you could make one heck of a movie out of it, or one heck of a show if you did it right. But instead, they decided to give that a facelift. And of course, they gave Frank a facelift too. Now, when they were debuting all of this, of course, they started talking about needing a dialogue on American gun control. Why did they talk about it? Well, because they got bad headlines. In fact, when this was first debuting, they were going to put it out at a Comic-Con. They got terrible feedback and decided to push it back because there was a mass shooting. There's a terrible tragedy. They said, yeah, we don't want our product and the headlines it gets connected to that. I can understand that in a way too, but they were going to get the headlines regardless. They want to pretend that they're not going to get them, but of course they did. They got, headlines like this. Well, I hope we can open up a dialogue on American gun control. And they also, give responses like, yeah, it tried that, but it failed to have that conversation. Now, when I'm watching a guy go out and get revenge and on, I don't think we're talking about gun control. I mean, when you look at the stuff with Frank Castle, and you look at exactly what's transpiring within that, this is not about limiting guns on the street. It's not about taking guns out of the bad guys' hands. I mean, when you look at the setup here, and you look at the people that were involved, is that really what you would have gleaned from it? Now, in addition to this, of course, our star not only talks about gun control, but he talks about quote-unquote alt-right. You have a lot of conversations about this too. Now, in this instance here, he is talking about Charlottesville. But if you go and you look up other instances, you'll see alt-right utilized basically to describe people that vote the wrong way, people that have wrongthink. You see this attached to this platform. And of course, alt-right, when you think about what that is attached to now, if you think about the stigma it carries with it and exactly who they want to attach stigma to, yeah, it's very telling. Now, when you see this kind of discussion, you hope beyond hope that these kind of descriptors, they stay out of your escapism. Because if they don't, I mean, truly think about what that's saying. That it's okay to go out and not like the way someone votes. So, hey, let's have a little bit of a shoot 'em up. I mean, what exactly are you implying with that? But of course, when you look at this, the stars, they can't keep these words out of their mouth. And the people behind the scenes, people like a Casada and on, of course, they can't do that as well. Also, if you take that and you add it into the conversation, you get rid of things like this. I mean, when you see an article that says this is about failed gun control or that punishers shouldn't exist because in current year we don't need this kind of thing. Well, if you change up the things that they're fighting, if you make this a little bit more nuanced within current year because it's almost 2020, well, you give people that quote-unquote positive to talk about. And what does the positive look like? Well, it looks like a headline like this. The Punisher Season 2 villain is an alt-right Christian fundamentalist. Now, when I'm discussing this stuff, I want you to understand, I'm not talking about my politics and I'm not talking about my faith. That doesn't work into this. What I'm talking about are things like how alt-right is described by some of these sources. When you look at this, for example, and you see exactly how they talk about it, the villain has been described as alt-right, a term that is associated with white nationalism and extreme conservatives. What is an extreme conservative? Well, if you go on social media and you look up the people that are targeted as quote-unquote alt-right, they're people that voted conservative. That made you a monster, apparently. You voted for the wrong guy? That's terrible. Not only that, but hey, you think discriminating against people that vote a specific way is bad? Well, you too are apparently alt-right these days. Now, when you're talking about carrying that forward, and you look at exactly how that targets, punch a Nazi, I'm sure that you've seen those discussions before. Well, again, you get into a violent fantasy where you're not punching them with a fist, but now you're punching them with a vigilante that fills them full of bullets. We've seen this kind of stuff play out for real too. Now, beyond that, you have Christian fundamentalism. Now, I don't mind that someone has a specific faith or that they're portrayed as a fundamentalist or some type of monster. What I do find telling is that this industry that would not reflect this with any other faith. In fact, here's a good example coming from comics, not from Marvel, but just comic books in general. So there was a book being put together about a kid that goes to a library that has a suicide bomb attached. He's going to blow the place up. He is motivated by a specific faith. He goes in, he interacts with all the people there, and he figures out that, hey, life is worth preserving. There is something more than this thing that is motivating us there. Now, the backlash to that, it was pretty much, again, current year, because you can't have that. You can imagine the spin to it. And it was pulled. There was an apology and on. So you get that from the same industry that, of course, doesn't mind giving you this as long as. So here's your description of the bad guy. On the exterior, John Pilgrim is a man who is a Christian fundamentalist who had a rage, a violent side of him. It's buried deep. I think where this is all headed, that sort of him is going to resurface a bit. Now, you have a costumer that comes in and describes the character as alt-right, and you see that, like I say, you see how that's described here, conservatives thrown in. So you have a specific faith, you have a specific voting preference, and it's A-okay to target those people in current year. Now, I'm interested in seeing how this plays out. But again, below the surface, you have to ask, why exactly these specific descriptors? But of course, when you ask that, you know that you have someone that's going out and targeting things based on mafifis, based on getting woke. And of course, when you're doing that, you're not only doing a disservice to the character, but in dividing your audience and targeting people there. I mean, what message are you relaying? That's the craziest thing within this. So what we've seen actually happen within life, because people want to target individuals that vote wrong, what we've seen and what this might relay. But again, you tell me what you think about all of this stuff. Do you think that this matters? I mean, do you think that, we're looking at this stuff within current year with the backdrop, that's actually going to be something that's ignored? What do you think motivates it to? I mean, do you think that this is a marketing strategy, to get away from that negative? Because I could very much see that. Or do we see a reflection of the people that are behind the scenes putting out something like this? Tell me what you think about that. Also, if you like this kind of material, make sure to support the channel. Like, sub, bell, all of those beautiful things. Also, you beautiful people out there, if you want to continue further, you want to support in a different way, there are links within the description. I would appreciate that. But thank you for popping in. New material at least once a day, maybe multiple times. I appreciate you checking that out, and always let me know what you think about something. Thank you.